idle games. They look like they are easy to do, which can be true, but very hard to master. Yep. Lots of game design, lots of mathematics, and lots of programming. So in this very first episode of the series, we will see how to create a resource manager. First, a little side note here. When I say a resource, I mean a game design resource. Like a material, a currency, an ingredient, anything that you use, you collect, you gather, you choose. So, why create resources? Idle games will be using a lot of resources because if you have nothing to gather, well, I don't know how you make an idle game without any currency or something alike. And here we will see basically how you create the groundwork to introduce a new currency to your game. So it's pretty much preparing everything you will need later on so that you can create your features without having to worry about how you are managing your resources. All right? So here we will be looking at a very simple pattern, which is the resource manager. So I say it's a pattern because when you have an idle game with a lot of resources, you tend to create a lot of managers to handle those resources. So here is the core of the pattern and actually the entire pattern. And those two guys on the side are just here to show you how to use that pattern once it's done. So the entire pattern here is to basically have your manager within a singleton and have this manager handle requests. So here I just said a big word. So if you don't know what a singleton is, it's not that bad if you don't understand it fully yet, because this is not really the crux of this episode. However, if you really want to check this out right now, there's a singleton video that I will link somewhere. Also, this can be a little bit too complicated for a beginner. So, also, I think it would be interesting to remind this. There's a crash course designed for this series. If you need to check your knowledge regarding programming or Godot, I suggest you go watch this crash course that I made quite a while ago because it's been specifically designed for this series that you're watching right now. Even though it's old, it just took a very long time to start the series. So, singletons basically are objects or units which are easily accessible from other parts of the script. This is only one aspect and dimensions of what singletons are, but here this is what we will be using and why we are choosing to use a singleton, because we want our silver manager to be accessible from anywhere in the game. We clear? So, before we actually dive into making this thing, I want to share with you an image or a visualization or a way to think about this node here. Just a little bit of context. When you make games with Unity, with game objects, or with Godot, with nodes, the thing is that you can create nodes that actually means something, right? When you create enemies, opponents, monsters like skeletons, that node, which is an entire scene with other nodes in it, it represents the monster. But sometimes you have nodes which represent nothing physical in the game, which are just hidden logical things, like this manager actually. You're never gonna see the manager in the game. It's just gonna be some brain cell that exists and that other objects within the game are connected to. However, we can think of this as a virtual butler because I feel like sometimes it's actually easier to bring programming back to something that makes sense to us, which is stories. Basically, stories is a great way to explain programming, so let's go with that. This manager here is a butler. It is a butler that is in charge of managing silver. So basically what they do is they have a container, a storage, a vault, a piggy bank, I don't care. They have a storage where they store a certain amount of silver. So you can imagine that you have an infinite storage which can have coins, but really what it is a numerical value. That's all it is. But coins in a storage is fun. So the first responsibility or task of our butler is actually to actually have the silver, right? They have the silver. Then they actually, you can communicate with this butler, okay? You can make requests to that butler, requests which allow you to make transactions with silver. And here I listed the 4 basic transactions that I use by default because those are usually the one you need and that's it. First transaction is please tell me how much silver you have in storage. Number 1, get silver. Right there. Second, we have create silver, which is please add this amount of silver to the storage. Then we have spend silver, which is please remove that amount of silver from the storage so that I can spend it. And then we have can spend, which is am I actually able to use that much silver? Or do we have this amount of silver in the storage right now? Which is a question, just a question. So these are the 4 basic requests that anyone can do or ask the butler to do. This is for the active request, right, which you can use. So here, for example, if you have a label that displays the amount of silver, they will request how many silver do you have in storage. Here, if you have a button that creates silver, they will go see the butler and say, hey, can you add this amount of silver to the storage? Okay, so that's for the request part. Here we have the storage again, which is private protected. And here we have signals. So this is another job responsibility of our butler, which is informing or maintaining a newsletter about silver, right? So here, for example, the silver button, which creates silver, doesn't care what happens to the silver, right? However, the label needs to know when to show something different. So they subscribe to a signal so that whenever the butler is sending their newsletter saying that the silver is updated or created or spent or whatever, those who care and subscribe, they will do things. The reason why we do that is because we here, as you can see, there's a vertical separation with my cursor because there's no separation in fact, but there's a separation between the logical parts of the game, which are the brain cells, and the green part of the game, which in Godot, green is user interface. What we want to do is to make sure that those are decoupled so that if there's a problem with creating silver, right, creating silver doesn't work, then we go here to make sure that creating silver is fixed, right? Because I don't want to go see the button if the problem, I mean, if I mix the code where it's not meant to be, for example, if the create silver is in there, right, like the button says, okay, I'm modifying this silver value, that begins to get messy because I actually have to find the button because it modifies silver directly. A little bit complicated sometimes, and trust me, it creates problems if you do that. I mean, it's okay, the code will work, no doubt. However, I'm not gonna maintain it, that's all. So, of course, if clicking the button doesn't work, where you click the button and you don't get the silver, all you have to check is the button here and the silver here. It's that simple. So, enough rambling about this. Let's jump into Godot and actually make this. Here we have a blank project with already a few things left from previous recordings which I discarded, so there is the blank project. So if you want to see the few settings I have, very simple. Here you go in advanced settings, you type debug, you go in GDescript, and there are those 4 warnings here that I usually use, so that you know why I do have warnings now. Also, let's get rid of debug. Display window. Here I change the resolution. Simple. And probably, yeah, I remove the imports here. And that's it. Those are the settings for this project. I do have editor settings as well, which are add type hints. There it is. This. If you wonder why my function ready has a void thing, add type hints in the editor settings. Right, so let's start by creating our resource manager, our butler. So we create a gray node and we name it manager silver. Now that it is created, we actually save it in a folder, Singletons, we actually save our manager silver in there. The reason why it's not silver manager, even though it's better English, it's because I want my managers to be stacked together when they are sorted alphabetically. So Singletons, recreate another folder, manager silver, OK, and save. This butler we have is purely non-physical, so we don't need to create actually any node in there except from the one which will hold the script right? That's the entire purpose of this node, holding the script. So we create the script, save it, and there we go. So we have our script and we want to give it a name. This is very important for singletons. Here, the name is just the regular name of the node, the file, the folder. I'm gonna show you the singleton pattern. So it's okay if you don't understand it fully yet, because what we want to do is just use it. Again, if you want the full information regarding singletons, video. We create a static variable named ref for reference. We type it manager silver, and then we create a init function. Here we have if not ref, we want ref to be equal to self. Otherwise, we want to queue3. So if there's already a reference, we get out and destroy the new node, and otherwise we take the place. Perfect. So this is how we have now a singleton. The reason why we do this again is because we want this class to be accessible for the label and the button. Now we want to create the silver storage. So here it's as simple as creating a variable silver, which is an integer that I initialize to 0. Later, we will want to use a save and load system, and we will want to load silver instead of initializing it to 0 right now. But at the moment we will not take care of this and just use basic initialization to 0. So now that we have our variable, we have to take care of creating the requests. So let's start with get silver, which returns an integer request. Return silver. This one is very easy, right? It's just a little thing on top of the silver variable here, because as you can see, there is an underscore. The reason why I put an underscore is to basically simulate or say that this is a private variable. If you know what public and private are, this is what I'm doing here. The actual impact that this has is when I access this script, this bottler, from another part of the code, from another script, this silver here won't be accessible. It won't be in the auto completion because of the underscore. That's it. So this is why we have this function here which doesn't have an underscore, which this one is going to be referenced. And I want to use this one. That's it. So let's create more requests, like create silver, for example. Here we need a quantity of silver to create, and that will actually return nothing. So by default, we just want silver to be increased by a quantity. Okay? However, I already tell you that it could be interesting to have a little check here. The check being what happens when the quantity is negative. It actually takes silver out. And we don't want to use create silver to spend silver. We are going to use a check here which says that if quantity is inferior or equal to 0, we will return to abort the silver creation. Now let's create more methods. So we will have can spend. So here we will tell the butler the quantity of silver we want to spend, and they will answer yes or no as a boolean. So here, if quantity is inferior to 0, because I guess that we can accept that eventually it is 0. Can I spend 0 silver? Well, yes, duh. So here, if quantity is inferior to 0, return false. You can't spend a negative amount of silver. Then, if quantity is superior to silver, so superior than the amount we own, again, we don't have enough, so we're gonna return no. And last, if there's no problem, we return true. So if this quantity is basically between silver and 0. Okay, now let's create another one. So here, spend silver. Again, I'm taking the liberty to show you how to use global enums, which are errors, but it's actually very easy and very important here. So here we will spend a quantity, and the method will return an error. So error is an enum. So enum is, if you want, you can go check the documentation page of enums. It could be interesting. But all I need you to understand right now is that it can take two values that we will use, which are error.failed, which means that there's an error, or error.ok. In a sense, it could be a boolean, 100% a boolean, which could be returning true if the transaction succeeded and returning false if the transaction failed. However, it's actually easier to understand as a programmer when you see the error enum that, hey, here we want to do something in particular if there's an error. We want to handle the error. While when there's a false, you might think I'm gonna discard it because you don't specifically know what it means. You have spent silver, true, false, man. Why error? Error, right? It failed, literally. So here again, if quantity is inferior to 0, we will return error dot failed. This is how you return enums. You get the type of the enum and the value here failed. Then, if quantity is superior to 0, then again return error dot failed. And if we have no problem, silver is being reduced by quantity, and we return error dot ok. And it's happy. So here we have created our 4 requests that the butler answers to. However, we did not do the signals yet, which are the newsletters. So we're just going to declare those newsletters in there, which are signal silver updated, signal silver created, and we will add the quantity of silver which has been created, and silver spent with again the quantity. There we go. The reason why there are 3 signals here and not just silver updated, because created and spent are updated, right? The reason is because I anticipate that we will implement quests, achievements, or any kind of statistics. Anyway, basically things that keep track of specific actions on Silver. If you want to have a tracker to say, I have generated this amount of silver since the start of the game, then you want to know exactly whenever the silver is created and how much. This is what this signal does, basically. And same thing for spending. Right, so actually now that we created those signals, it is necessary to emit those signals when it makes sense. So here, get silver, no signal. Create silver, we will have this silver created, and we will emit the quantity. And we will have silver updated, and we just emit it. So we emit both, because basically based on the need, they will take either updated or created. Okay? Here, can spend, no modification on silver, so no need for signal. Here, silver has been changed, so we can go with silver spent dot emit with the quantity, and the silver updated, updated dot emit. So we're pretty much done. Okay, this code right there is the actual code for this entire block. GG. So we could actually stop the episode right there, but since it's actually just 28 minutes, we can actually create a few components and see how we're going to use and communicate with this singleton here. First, I want to remind you that for anyone to be able to communicate with our singleton, it has to be in the game, right? So we have to create a scene tree of the game, which will have this manager silver somewhere and the user interface somewhere else. So let's create actually a node here, which I'm gonna name game, and this is gonna be the node that contains the entire game. I'm gonna save it in my singletons as game. And in the game at the moment, I will just add my, I'm actually in the wrong one. I will add my manager silver in the game. So it's in the game now. Perfect. Let's save and actually create a few components. So here, let's go with a label. So this label is label silver. This one I will not save in singletons because it's not a singleton, but it is a component. And in my components, label silver. Perfect. We have our guy here. What anchor do we want? Yes, full right is fine. And well, actually, let's not change anything in there. Let's just create the script. And there we go. So we already created in the crash course a label that displays the amount of silver. However, here we want to respect this design. So this label here will be subscribing to silver updated and using the method getSilver from the butler. Let's start with something simple. The update text method doesn't take any argument, it is a void, and here the text is gonna be equal to silver column and the silver value here. So this is when we actually need to know the amount of silver. So what do? We call on the manager silver, which is our butler. We call on its reference, because this is how you call on a singleton. And I forgot the percent, very much sorry. We call on its reference, and here we have the various requests: can spend, create silver, get silver, which is the one we need. And there we go. This will return the amount of silver which will be sent in the label. Perfect. Now, we actually need to subscribe. So here we will have a on silver updated. So we are taking the silver updated signal. So we don't take arguments, because argument and signals, very complicated, lots of bugs. So anyway, here, when silver is updated, what do? We update the text. Very simple. So now this is just the method. This is just the what do we do when the silver is updated. So now let's actually connect it for real by using our ready method. So first, what I want to do actually is first update the text once, because when the label arrives, let's just initialize the text. And let's connect the signal. So again, I will type inventory a lot because that's recent video. So manager silver dot ref dot silver updated, and we use the connect method on our latest function. This is it. Our label works. However, if I just start the label here, I will have a problem because manager silver doesn't exist. Little problem. So I actually need to bring my label, so my component here, I need to bring it to my game. Label silver, I put it in a game, and that's it. So now I run my game, and I do have 0 silver. Let's create a new component. Let's create a button actually. Here we're gonna change this to a button, which is gonna be a button silver. I'm gonna save this in its own component thing. Button silver. That's it. Script. And there we go. We have a function on pressed. What do we do when we are pressing the button? We want to find a butler, and we want to create silver. Here, let's create 10 silver. Now, just like usual, when we are ready, we want to find pressed, and we want to connect this to unpressed. There we go. So now my button should actually be able to generate 10 gold, or not, because it actually generates silver. 10 silver is generated when we press the button. Again, we need to add it to the game in order for it to work. So let's go back to, yes, that's a big button. Let's actually change it to center and give it a little size in control layout. Minimum size 320, 80, that's the magic numbers for buttons. And create and silver. So now, as we said, game, we bring in our button in there. That's it. Let's actually move our label to be center top. And let's save this and start the game. We have 0 silver, we create 10 silver, and we can now create silver. But this button is decoupled, this label is decoupled, and we have a magic butler doing all the transactions for us. And we can have as many labels as we want. Here's another one, and another one. Have one on the left, have one on the right, and we should have 3 labels because those are components. So we can duplicate those as many times as we wish. And in fact, we can create different buttons with different values. So here, sadly, our button has a value 10. You know what? We actually can create a variable here, which is constant silver to create, which is an integer, which is going to be 10. And here we will have silver to create, right? So now we can change this. However, little problem. I usually dislike now to use editor edits in there because this is the first source of bug questions I have. People forgetting about this. But anyway, I will show you because that's a fun thing. You go with an export variable, silver to create, which is an integer initialized to 10. Here we have again silver to create. Okay. And actually I will make another thing, which is here. We will just change the text to be equal to create a certain amount of silver with % being silver to create. Okay, we have this. Now, what we can do is go to our game right there. We can clean this error because it is solved. We can duplicate our button. We will move the button here, the button here, and since we have this value exported right there, we can change the value actually, so we can create 100 and 1,000. So now if I run the game, we have create 10 silver, 100 silver, and 1,000 silver just by adding this export variable here to change in the editor. It can be changed through the scripts, but it's not really the point of this episode here. Anyway, my point is that with those things, you know what? I'm actually going to give you an exercise. A very simple exercise. I want you, just with that, to create a component, a scene, whatever, which contains a few buttons, like this one, 10 silver, 100,000, which are gonna be debug buttons. right? So a kind of debug menu that will allow you to cheat code Silver to debug things faster. Just create a scene with few buttons, and I will show you one thing, okay, which is a node. Okay, I'm going to show you a node. Here, if we add a child node and you search for container in user interface containers, did I use that in the crash course? I think I didn't. So anyway, here you have the vertical box container or VBox container. It is a container that arranges its child controls vertically. So you can try, basically, you create this box, and then within that box you had a different set of buttons. The box will basically position the buttons for you, as long as you provide a minimum size for those buttons. So that's it. With this VBox, those buttons, you should be able to create that debug scene. And later on, we will actually pretty much solve this little exercise. So yeah, that's it. That's it for this first episode. I hope you liked it. It's been a very long time since I've wanted to reboot this series. No kidding, this episode I recorded at least 5 times, changed the script 5 times, even more. It was very, I don't know. I was actually waiting for a new microphone, which came in, but was broken, so I can't use it. Very huge fun. So yes, if you liked it, think about actually doing the YouTube things to create engagement. So I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoy the idea of having little exercise at the end, tell me, because if you don't, I will most likely forget. But if just 1% says I like it, then I will remember. But yeah. So anyway, I'll see you later.